I'm sitting in my car outside Mulvaney's B and L in Sacramento on L Street, watching through the window as my father shakes hands with my boyfriend Marcus. They're both smiling, completely at ease with each other, and I can see Dad laughing at something Marcus just said. What my father doesn't know is that I'm about to walk into that restaurant and blow up both of their worlds. What Marcus doesn't know is that the truth my father discovered isn't the truth at all. It's a carefully constructed lie that I planted 3 weeks ago, and Dad swallowed it whole. My hands are trembling on the steering wheel, but not from fear. From rage. Because 6 hours ago, my father called me and said, "Kennedy, we need to talk about Marcus. I found something out, and we need to handle this as a family." Handle this as a family. Like I'm a problem that needs managing, instead of a grown woman who deserves respect. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button now. Your support means everything to me, especially if you've ever had a parent who thought controlling your life was the same as loving you. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. Let me back up so you understand the full picture. I'm Kennedy, 25 years old, and I've been with Marcus for 2 years. We met at a nonprofit fundraiser at the Crocker Art Museum, where I was coordinating the event, and he was there representing his architecture firm. Marcus is 32, successful, intelligent, and treats me like an equal partner instead of a possession. When he talks about his work designing affordable housing projects in Oak Park and Del Paso Heights, his eyes light up with genuine passion for making a difference. He's everything I could want in a partner, which is exactly why my father has hated him from day one. Not because Marcus has done anything wrong, but because Marcus represents something my father can't control, my independence. See, I'm the only daughter in a family of 4 kids, and Dad has spent my entire life trying to dictate every aspect of my existence. Growing up in our house in East Sacramento near McKinley Park was like living under surveillance. Dad controlled what I wore, who I talked to, what activities I could join, and eventually what college I could attend. He wasn't physically abusive, he was something worse. He was psychologically suffocating, wrapping his control in the language of love and protection. "I'm just looking out for you, princess. The world is dangerous for young women. I need to make sure you're safe." Safe meant isolated. Safe meant dependent. Safe meant never developing the skills to make my own decisions because Dad had already made them for me. My brothers, Owen, Cameron, and Jackson, got freedom. They got to play sports, go to parties, date whoever they wanted, and make mistakes. But me, I got lectures about family reputation and being a good girl and not embarrassing the family name. When I brought Marcus home for the first time, Dad's reaction was immediate and hostile. "He's too old for you," Dad said the moment Marcus left our house after that first dinner. 7 years is a significant age gap. What does a 30-year-old man want with a 23-year-old girl? "I'm not a girl, Dad, I'm an adult, and 7 years isn't that significant. It is when you're at different life stages. He's established in his career. You're still figuring yourself out. That's a power imbalance, Kennedy." The irony of my father lecturing me about power imbalances while exercising absolute power over my life was apparently lost on him. Over the next few months, Dad's campaign against Marcus escalated. He accidentally scheduled family events during times I'd told him Marcus, and I had plans. He made passive-aggressive comments about Marcus's career, his family background, and his intentions. He even hired a private investigator to dig into Marcus's past, hoping to find something incriminating. The investigator found nothing because there was nothing to find. Marcus is exactly who he appears to be, a good man with a stable career and genuine feelings for me. But Dad couldn't accept that. In his mind, any man interested in his daughter must have ulterior motives. So he started working on a different strategy, convincing me that Marcus was wrong for me through manipulation and manufactured doubt. "I heard his firm is having financial troubles," Dad would say casually over Sunday dinner at our house. This was a lie. Marcus's firm was thriving. "Someone told me they saw Marcus having lunch with a woman at the Firehouse restaurant in Old Sacramento. Just thought you should know." Also a lie, or at minimum, a deliberate misrepresentation of a work lunch. The breaking point came 3 months ago when Dad showed up unannounced at my apartment in Midtown on 20th Street and let himself in with a key I didn't know he still had. I'd made the mistake of giving him an emergency key when I first moved in, and he'd apparently kept a copy. I came home from work at the California Environmental Protection Agency headquarters on N Street to find Dad sitting on my couch, going through my laptop. "What are you doing?" I demanded, anger overriding shock. "Making sure you're safe," he said, not even looking ashamed. "I need to know what's happening in your life, Kennedy. You've been distant lately. Because you're suffocating me, you can't just break into my apartment and go through my private things." "I didn't break in. I used my key. And these aren't private things, they're concerning communications with a man who I don't trust." He'd been reading my messages with Marcus. Personal conversations about our relationship, our future plans, our intimate moments. The violation was so complete that I actually felt sick. "Get out," I said quietly. "Kennedy, I'm your father. Get out of my apartment right now, or I'm calling the police and reporting a break-in." Dad left, but not before making it clear that he considered my relationship with Marcus a phase that would end once I came to my senses. That night, I changed my locks and started limiting contact with my father to group family settings where his behavior would be moderated by Mom and my brothers. But Dad wasn't done. He started working on Mom, trying to get her to intervene. He pressured my brothers to talk sense into me about my relationship. He even contacted my boss at the EPA, claiming he was worried about my mental health, hoping they'd somehow confirm his suspicions that Marcus was a bad influence. None of it worked. My relationship with Marcus only got stronger as I pulled away from my father's toxic control. Marcus never asked me to choose between him and my family. He never spoke badly about Dad despite having every reason to hate him. He just consistently treated me with respect and supported my autonomy. Which, ironically, was exactly what made Dad hate him more. 2 months ago, something shifted. Dad suddenly became pleasant about Marcus. He invited us both to dinner at his house, apologized for his previous behavior, and claimed he'd done some reflecting about being overprotective. "I realize I've been unfair to Marcus," Dad said over steaks he'd grilled in his backyard near Curtis Park. "I let my fear about losing my little girl cloud my judgment about who you're actually dadding. Marcus, I apologize for making you feel unwelcome in this family." Marcus, being a genuinely good person, accepted the apology graciously. "I understand where you were coming from, sir. Kennedy means the world to me, and I can see she means the world to you too. I'm just glad we can move forward." I should have been relieved. Instead, I felt uneasy. My father didn't change his core beliefs overnight. Something else was happening, and I needed to figure out what. That's when I started my own investigation. If Dad had hired a private investigator to look into Marcus, I could hire someone to look into what Dad was planning. I found a woman named Andrea Chen who ran a discreet investigation service out of an office in Roseville. "I need to know what my father is up to," I told her during our first meeting at Temple Coffee Roasters in downtown Sacramento. "He's pretending to accept my relationship, but I don't trust him." "What makes you think he's planning something?" Andrea asked. "Because I've known him for 25 years, and he doesn't let go of control. Ever. If he's suddenly backing off, it's because he's found a different angle of attack." Andrea took the job and spent 2 weeks following my father and monitoring his communications. What she discovered was worse than I'd imagined. Dad had joined an online forum for fathers of wayward daughters, where men shared strategies for breaking up their daughters' relationships with men they deemed unsuitable. The forum was exactly as toxic as it sounds, full of manipulation tactics, legal strategies for interference, and even suggestions for manufacturing evidence of infidelity or criminal behavior. My father had been active on this forum for months, posting about his situation and asking for advice. The responses were disturbing. "Plant evidence of drug use and call the cops. Catfish him online and create fake messages to show your daughter. Hire someone to seduce him and photograph them together." Dad had responded positively to several of these suggestions, specifically the one about creating fake evidence. Andrea's monitoring showed that Dad had been in contact with a woman who ran a testing service. Basically, women who would try to seduce men to see if they'd cheat, then report back to whoever hired them. But here's where it got interesting. Dad's plan wasn't to test Marcus and hope he failed. It was to create fake evidence of Marcus cheating regardless of what actually happened, then present it to me as proof that Marcus wasn't trustworthy. The woman Dad hired would approach Marcus, get photographed with him in compromising-looking situations that were actually innocent, and then those photos would be discovered, by my father, who would show them to me in a heartbroken intervention about how Marcus had betrayed me. It was elaborate, expensive, and absolutely insane. When Andrea showed me the evidence, screenshots of Dad's forum posts, bank records showing payment to the testing service, and even audio of Dad discussing the plan with someone on the phone, I felt something inside me break. Not my heart, my tolerance for his behavior. This wasn't love. This wasn't protection. This was control taken to a pathological extreme. I made a decision in that moment that would change everything. Instead of confronting Dad directly, I was going to beat him at his own game. I contacted the woman Dad had hired. Her name was Simone, and offered her double what my father was paying if she'd work with me instead. "Here's what I want," I told her during a meeting at a Starbucks in Folsom. "I want you to do exactly what my father hired you to do: approach Marcus, create situations that could look compromising, take photos. But I want you to tell me everything as it happens so I can control the narrative." Simone was surprisingly ethical for someone who made a living testing people's fidelity. "Why not just tell your boyfriend what your father is planning? Because Marcus would want to confront him, and that would just create drama. I want my father to think his plan is working, and then I want to expose him for the manipulative control freak he is in front of everyone who matters." Over the next 3 weeks, Simone executed the plan perfectly. She accidentally bumped into Marcus at Cafeteria 15L on K Street, where he ate lunch regularly. She struck up a friendly conversation about architecture, which was easy because she'd done her research. She got photos of them talking that could look flirtatious if you didn't know the context. She followed him to a client meeting at a building site in Natomas and got photos of them standing close together looking at blueprints. With the right framing, it could look intimate. She even staged a scenario where she dropped her phone on the street and Marcus helped her pick it up, resulting in a photo of them bending down together that could be misinterpreted. Every single interaction, Simone reported back to me with full context and unedited photos showing the innocent reality. Marcus never behaved inappropriately. He was friendly but professional, never giving Simone any indication he was interested in her romantically. Meanwhile, I played my part perfectly. I acted like everything was normal with Dad. I attended family dinners where he was suspiciously pleasant. I thanked him for coming around on Marcus. I even asked his advice about relationship stuff, feeding his ego and making him think his new strategy was working. Behind the scenes, I was documenting everything. Screenshots of his forum posts, bank records of his payment to Simone, recordings of calls where he discussed the plan. Andrea helped me compile everything into a comprehensive folder that proved exactly what Dad had been trying to do. The trap was set. I just needed Dad to spring it. This morning, he finally made his move. He called me at 8 a.m. sounding somber and concerned. "Kennedy, I need to see you today. I've discovered something about Marcus that you need to know. Can you meet me for lunch?" "What is it?" I asked, feigning worry. "Is Marcus okay?" "Marcus is fine, but I found out he's been seeing someone else. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I know this will hurt, but you need to know the truth." Perfect. Dad had taken the bait. "How did you find out?" I asked, letting my voice shake. "A friend of mine saw them together multiple times and took photos. I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence is clear. Can you meet me at Mulvaney's at 1 o'clock? I want to show you everything and help you figure out what to do." "Should I bring Marcus?" I asked. "Absolutely not. This is a family conversation first. Once you've seen the evidence, you can decide how to confront him." The presumption that I'd need Dad's help figuring out what to do about my own relationship was typically insulting. But I agreed to meet him, and then I called Marcus. "Remember that thing we talked about with my father? It's happening today. Are you still willing to play along?" Marcus had known about Dad's plan for 2 weeks. I told him everything after Simone's first approach, and to his credit, he'd been more sad than angry. "I feel bad for him," Marcus said. "To be so afraid of losing control that you'd sabotage your own daughter's happiness. That's tragic." Now, with Dad's trap springing, Marcus agreed to meet us at the restaurant. "I'll show up about 15 minutes after you get there," he said. "That should give him time to show you the evidence before I walk in." At 12:45, I parked outside Mulvaney's and watched Dad arrive. He looked serious and determined, carrying a folder that I knew contained Simone's carefully staged photos. At 12:55, I walked inside. Dad stood and hugged me, his face arranged in an expression of concerned sympathy. "How are you holding up, Princess?" "I don't know yet. I haven't seen what you found." We sat down, and Dad opened his folder dramatically. "This is going to be hard to see," he prefaced, sliding photos across the table. "But I need you to understand who Marcus really is." The photos showed exactly what Simone and I had planned: Marcus talking to an attractive woman at a restaurant, standing close to her at a construction site, bending down near her on a sidewalk. Out of context, they could definitely look suspicious. I picked them up and studied them, letting Dad see concern on my face. "Who is she?" I asked quietly. "I don't know her name, but my friend saw them together 3 different times over the past 2 weeks. Kennedy, I'm so sorry, but it's pretty clear what's happening here. You think Marcus is cheating on me. I don't want to think it, but the evidence is right there. And honey, I know this hurts, but maybe it's better you found out now before you got even more serious with him." There it was. The underlying message: Marcus was never right for you anyway, and now I've proven it. I set the photos down and looked at my father. 25 years of his control flashed through my mind. Every decision he'd made for me, every boundary he'd violated, every time he'd prioritized his need for control over my need for autonomy. "Dad, I need to tell you something," I said calmly. "These photos aren't what you think they are." His face shifted slightly. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I know exactly who this woman is, what these photos show, and who hired her to create them." The color drained from Dad's face. "Kennedy, her name is Simone. You paid her $3,000 to approach Marcus and manufacture evidence that he was cheating on me. You found her through an online forum for controlling fathers where you've been posting about strategies to break up my relationship for months." Dead silence at our table. "But here's the thing, Dad. I found out about your plan 3 weeks ago. I hired my own investigator who's been monitoring you. And I paid Simone double to work for me instead of you." Dad tried to recover. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do. I have screenshots of your forum posts, bank records of your payment to Simone, recordings of your phone calls discussing the plan. I have everything, Dad, and I've been letting you think it was working so I could see exactly how far you'd go." His face went from pale to red. "You set me up." "No, I caught you. There's a difference. You set yourself up by being so desperate to control me that you'd commit fraud and defamation." That's when Marcus walked into the restaurant, right on time. He approached our table looking calm and composed. "Hello, sir," he said to my father. "Kennedy told me we were all meeting here to discuss something important." Dad looked between us, finally understanding that he'd been outplayed. "You knew," he said to Marcus. "She told you." "She did, 3 weeks ago." "Which means I've spent the past 3 weeks being professionally friendly to a woman your wife hired to seduce me, knowing exactly what was happening." Marcus sat down next to me and took my hand. "I also spent those 3 weeks watching Kennedy wrestle with what to do about this, and I want you to know that I never asked her to choose between her family and me. I would never do that. But you forced that choice by making it impossible for her to have both a relationship with me and a relationship with you." "This is none of your business," Dad snapped. "You've poisoned my daughter against me." "No," I interrupted. "You did this yourself. Every time you violated my privacy, every time you tried to manipulate me, every time you made it clear that your need for control was more important than my happiness, you were poisoning our relationship. This is just the culmination of 25 years of you treating me like property instead of a person." Dad stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. Other diners were starting to stare. "I'm your father. I was protecting you." "From what, Dad? From a successful, honest man who treats me with respect, from making my own decisions, from having a life you don't control." My voice was rising now, and I didn't care who heard. "You weren't protecting me. You were protecting your ego, because if I'm happy with someone you didn't choose, it means you're not as necessary to my life as you think you are. Kennedy, you're making a mistake. The mistake was giving you the benefit of the doubt for as long as I did. The mistake was thinking you might actually change instead of just finding new ways to manipulate me." I pulled out my own folder and placed it on the table. "This contains all the evidence of what you tried to do. Your forum posts where you discuss strategies for destroying my relationship. Your payment to Simone. The fake photos you plan to use against Marcus. All of it." Dad stared at the folder like it might explode. "What are you going to do with that?" "That depends on you," I said. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave this restaurant right now, and you're going to think very carefully about who you want to be. If you want to be my father, my actual father who loves and supports me, then you'll respect my boundaries, apologize genuinely for what you've done, and get professional help for your control issues." "And if I don't?" he asked defiantly. Then I'll email this folder to Mom, all 3 of my brothers, and every single person in our extended family. They'll know exactly what you tried to do and why. Your reputation as the perfect protective father will be destroyed, and you'll lose access to me completely. Marcus squeezed my hand supportively but said nothing. This was between me and Dad. You're blackmailing me, Dad said. I'm giving you a choice. Change and potentially maintain some relationship with me, or stay the same and lose me forever. Those are your options. Dad grabbed the folder with the fake photos and stormed out of the restaurant without another word. Marcus and I sat in silence for a moment, watching through the window as Dad got in his car and drove away. How do you feel? Marcus asked gently. Honestly, I felt lighter than I had in years, terrifying but liberating. I feel free, I said, like I finally stood up for myself in a way that mattered. We finished lunch, actually ate the food we'd ordered, and talked about what came next. I'd need to have difficult conversations with my mom and brothers. I'd need to be prepared for Dad to either double down on his behavior or actually face his issues. And I'd need to process the grief of potentially losing my relationship with my father entirely. But for the first time in my life, I felt like I was in control of my own story. Over the next week, the fallout was intense but predictable. Mom called me crying, saying Dad had told her a very different version of events where I'd set him up and chosen my boyfriend over family. I sent her the evidence folder. She called back 2 hours later. Kennedy, I had no idea it had gotten this bad. Your father has always been protective, but this is beyond anything I imagined. Did you know he'd hired someone to frame Marcus? Absolutely not. If I'd known, I would have stopped him. Mom convinced Dad to attend therapy, both individual sessions and eventually family counseling with me if I was willing. I agreed to the family counseling with conditions. Dad had to complete at least 12 individual sessions first, and I'd bring Marcus to any session where my relationship was discussed. My brothers had mixed reactions. Owen, the oldest, was angry at Dad for putting the family through this. Cameron tried to play peacekeeper, suggesting we all just move past it. Jackson, the youngest at 22, surprised me by saying, I always knew Dad was weird about Kennedy, but I didn't realize it was this bad. No wonder you moved out as soon as you could. 4 months after that confrontation at Mulvaney's, I'm sitting on the patio of my apartment in Midtown with new locks that only I have keys to. Dad and I have had 3 supervised therapy sessions where he started, slowly and painfully, to acknowledge how his need for control damaged me. We're not close. We might never be close again, but there's a possibility of some kind of relationship if he continues to do the work. Mom and I are rebuilding our connections separate from Dad. My brothers and I have gotten closer, especially Jackson, who started asking me questions about healthy relationships now that he's seeing someone seriously. Marcus and I are stronger than ever, planning to move in together next month into a house in Land Park with a yard and space for the life we're building. The folder of evidence sits in my safe deposit box at a bank on Capitol Mall. I've never had to share it beyond my immediate family, but knowing it exists gives me power I never had before, the power to protect my boundaries with consequences Dad actually fears. People ask if I regret how I handled things, if I wish I just talked to Dad directly instead of setting up the elaborate trap. My answer is always the same. I tried talking to him directly for 25 years. Words didn't work. Boundaries didn't work. Distance didn't work. What finally worked was showing him exactly what he was doing by reflecting his own manipulation back at him. Dad thought discovering the truth about Marcus would end my relationship and bring me back under his control. Instead, my response ended his control over me entirely. And honestly, that's the best outcome I could have hoped for. I'm Kennedy. I'm 25 years old, and I finally understand that loving your parents doesn't mean accepting their dysfunction. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to participate in their pathology, even when that refusal costs you the relationship you wish you could have. My father wanted to protect me from making mistakes. Instead, he made the biggest mistake of his life, underestimating my strength and pushing me until I had no choice but to push back. The truth he discovered wasn't about Marcus at all. It was about me. I wasn't his little princess who needed saving anymore. I was a grown woman who could save herself, and my response to his manipulation didn't just end his plan. It ended an entire era of my life where I accepted control as love. Now I know the difference, and I'll never go back to not knowing. The story you've just heard happens more than people admit. Parents who believe control equals love, daughters who finally break free, and families forever changed by the courage to set boundaries. I'm sharing this to remind you that you don't owe anyone access to your life just because they're family. If you were Kennedy, would you have confronted your father directly or set the trap like she did? Would you have maintained any relationship with him after what he tried to do, or would you have walked away completely? I want to know your thoughts because every story shared helps someone else recognize toxic patterns in their own life. God bless you, and may you always have the strength to choose your peace over other people's need to control you. Meanwhile, on the final screen, I'm leaving you with one of the most powerful channels for real stories of justice, King's Revenge Vault. Every story there will remind you that breaking free from control is possible. Thank you for staying with me until this moment.